Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to Connecting Cannabis, brought to you by Wrazel. I am your host, Brian Haller. Hope everybody's doing well today. Our guest today is R'Chelle Mullins. She'll be talking to us about her marketing and content creation agency and best practices, tips for cannabis companies, and all sorts of cool content pieces that we're going to discuss as well. So I look forward to that very much. But first, of course, I would love to talk to you about Apricot Analytics. They are a full-service product quality lab for cannabis testing and CBD hemp testing. They have over a decade of analytical lab experience and have been working with cannabis products since 2005. Apricot Analytics understands the needs of cannabis and hemp producers because they were producers themselves. They know the challenges, the frustrations and dreams of cultivators and manufacturers. They get it because they've been here and they're here to help. Apricot Analytics tests your products for the good stuff like THC and CBD concentrations and helps you identify any bad stuff like pesticides, mold, bacteria, and heavy metals. For more information, go to apricotanalytics.com, or to learn more about their current investment opportunity, go to the Wrazel Investment Marketplace at wrazel.com. So, R'Chelle, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you doing?
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. I'm great. It's nice and sunny in LA today, so I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, it's hard to complain. We're finally getting that hot back, right? You know, it was like 85, 90 yesterday, so, certainly can't complain when it gets like that.
Exactly.
So let's dive right in. One thing I was really interested to have you on for is because you're fairly new to cannabis in all things considered, but let's give a little bit about your history. Obviously you have a marketing and content creation agency. Has that always been your background? Have you always done that?
So I've always loved words. I've just always had a love for words and communication. So actually I started as a educator. I was a 9th grade English teacher for a couple of years, went into higher education and wrote policy for some of the major accrediting bodies, and life just kind of happened and I ended up here.
Absolutely. Actually, I forgot that you were a teacher, as was I. I taught middle school history and English for 5 years. And then I plopped right into like digital marketing and content right in there. It's kind of, did you kind of find yourself, in a weird way, it lends itself to it because you have to create lesson plans, you're creating different types of ways to engage with kids, taking it to kind of a B2B or a B2C situation, using all the tools available to you, which you're also trying to teach students about, right? So it's
Right.
It's a more logical transition than people realize, I think. Don't you think?
Very much so. I know when I shared with my parents that I was going to start my own business and get into the digital space, like they were just so upset. They just felt like I was throwing my degree away. And the more that I worked in the field, I realized that experience with those lesson plans, creating curriculum, and just understanding how to convey a message to one group in several different ways. Yep. That taught me so much about digital content, for sure.
Yeah, you also learn, I think, to kind of add on to what you're saying, you kind of learn about internal processes that hold up content, or approval processes, and what makes a good one, what makes a bad one, pressure from leadership not to do this but to do that. It really serves you well once you go out on your own and you have to serve a lot of different types of folks, a lot of different types of companies, allows you to adjust quicker.
For sure.
Okay, so you were an educator, and then that kind of sparked the digital marketing, love. Did you work for a company, or did you dive right into your own agency?
So I did my own thing immediately, kind of. So when I started, this will take us back to maybe 2007, perhaps. And at that time, I was really into beauty. I was freelancing on the side in addition to my education, and still trying to figure out what could even be done in the online space, and just kind of built community from there. And was presented with a lot of opportunities to do some contract work for other brands, and it just kind of evolved. Yeah, just definitely evolved from there.
And so you'd say, even though you didn't know exactly kind of where you wanted to go, you kind of knew an area, and you just started putting yourself out there a little bit, connecting with people, building that initial network, and then all of a sudden allowing that to kind of grow and steer you in certain directions. Everybody listening, that is a great piece of advice that R'Chelle is giving you. if you're in transition, or you're just doing something and you're looking to get into something else, or you would like to be a thought leader in your space, there is no better way than to use the resources right under your nose and to get out there, whether it's by writing or imagery or talking on video, and I'm going to guess that sort of led you into, more business.
Yeah, I think I totally agree with what you're saying. I talked about that a little bit yesterday on some of my social platforms about just enjoying the journey. I knew probably around 2014 that I was interested in the cannabis space in some way.
Sure.
It still was even more new than it is now. And at that time, I only thought, okay, well, my only barrier of entry will be a dispensary. And the more that I looked at states who were at least introducing medical programs, I began to understand everything that it takes to cultivate the flower, to bring it to market. And there were just so many entry points into the industry that I saw that just didn't seem to be discussed. It was either grow or get a dispensary.
Yeah.
And in there, I found my niche, which was communication and content and helping on the ancillary side. So everything, it took some years, right? I've only been officially in the cannabis space for about a year. So that was 2014. But those years in between was just, it helped me continue to evolve the digital business that I already had. Gain knowledge, develop skills, and just all of these experiences just were able to put me where I am today.
And so, yeah, you built your company, right, by, working in different industries, yet kind of had your eye fixated on cannabis once you could kind of get there, right? And you always probably were, kind of teasing it or trying to connect with people as you could,
right.
Meanwhile, still, putting your current clients first.
Absolutely.
And so as we transitioned, what was your first, cannabis kind of project that you worked on?
It was a copy project. So I went to a conference and they had one little panel about cannabis. And I made sure that I was in that panel, that I was in the front row, that I asked the right questions and connected with the panelists. And I just literally followed up and sent an email. And I was like, hey, I'd love to write your web copy for you. And because they saw that I was interested in cannabis itself, I had that knowledge. They felt comfortable, like not having a cannabis agency at that time or any kind of experience. They felt comfortable enough with my previous body of work and my knowledge of cannabis to cultivate a copy for them. And that was the first project.
Excellent. And so for those of you who might not be aware, copy is writing. R'Chelle was either writing articles or perhaps, I would imagine a lot of different things, right? Articles, social posts, internal docs, sales tools, things like that.
Yeah.
And so that kind of leads us in. Okay, so now you're in cannabis. Now you've been in there a year. We see you out there, of course, as well. What have you noticed in terms of just content from different businesses in the space? I feel like there's certain trends that maybe we want to try to buck right now. What do you think?
I think that I think that you might get a different answer probably depending on who you ask,
Sure.
right? So my perspective of the industry and what might be missing as it relates to content is I'm not confident that there is enough niched down content that speaks to specific audiences, right? So
Right.
I don't know. One of my approaches when I work with brands is, how are you speaking to people of color? How are you messaging a woman who looks like me, who is mid to late 30s, who has professional degrees, who owns a business, but for several reasons, race, faith, cultural issues, there may be some objections to that. So trying to work with brands to just create content that is beyond, here is cannabis, here's weed, medicate, get high, have fun, live the Sterner life. So just trying to really just open up and broaden the types of conversations that we have about cannabis and really just be open and talk about all of the good and the bad and the in-between that comes with the topic.
Yes. I would echo that. Obviously at Wrazel, we're working from kind of a business and financial perspective with our clients. And so we definitely see that there's a lack of kind of that information. I mean, again, it's kind of this old back and forth when you're, especially in a B2B situation, it's like, well, I want to be informative, but I got to entertain a little too. I can't just want, all day long. So that can be difficult sort of, in terms of finding your balance there, depending on your brand and your company. But I agree, I feel like it's either one or the other, and there's a whole middle ground here of all sorts of things that we could do. I like the idea of, I don't know if this is even the right word to use, but normalizing, right? Normalizing it, right? It's a medicine. It's all these things that all sorts of different types of people from all walks of life use, and they use it for a variety of things. So, have you found storytelling to be a good way to kind of navigate those waters?
Absolutely. That's actually what I kind of had to go back. I shared recently with some of my mentors, I feel like I'm hitting the reset button in a sense, because like you mentioned, there's a lot in cannabis, and most of us identified by industry. Are you licensed? Are you growing? Right. Are you an investor? And I realized that there wasn't a lot of people who are invested in talking about, like, how do I just have this conversation? There's so many people who slide in my DMs and who are like, oh my gosh, how do you have the courage to just talk about weed so openly? How do you have the courage to consume online? And just, I'm really invested in helping people give themselves permission to enjoy the consumption, and also figure out as business owners, as smaller ancillary business owners, how to introduce these conversations to their audience while still showing up as professional and as a necessary service provider.
Yep, I'm with you. I don't understand why you would promote a product that you're not willing to show yourself, using. Mm-hmm. Right. And and maybe that's not your brand, fair enough. I guess I can give you that. Right. But my whole thing to people was always to say, are you comfortable with a picture of you drinking a glass of beer or a wine or a drink? Yes. Then, then if you do this as much, if not more, or you're more strongly, aligned with cannabis, what are you doing? Go ahead and throw it out there.
It goes back to what you're saying. It's all in work to normalize, to really normalize the imagery and the conversations.
Yeah, and I think that we can be distracted a little bit, or kind of tunnel vision in California, right? Especially, medicinal for the longest in the country, been legal for a couple of years now, officially. We're on the West Coast, et cetera. I think we definitely can forget sometimes that there are a wide variety of people looking at this stuff and at different levels of understanding or knowledge, or even willingness. Mm-hmm. So how do you, what are some ways that you like to work with clients to address that in your content and how you work with them?
I spend a lot of time with my clients just really defining who their target audience is. Looking at their goals. So goals for profitability, who they want to be in the audience, and just creating the content for that audience, right? So if you know that you have baby boomers in your audience, then you probably don't want to spend a lot of time doing IG lives and a whole bunch of TV. So just really figuring out where your audience is, as well as how they want to digest your content. You know what I mean? How can you build a community of people who are going to be willing and open to talk about cannabis and engage with you the way that they want to? I think a lot of times, especially as small business owners, it's our business, our product, our service is our baby. So we hold it real close and we're like, okay, well, this is how you need to consume this baby. This is how you need to read this. This is how you need, and it's just about making sure that the customers first, and we're building content along with the buyer's journey, so that they can use your content to know, like, and trust you along the way.
That's exactly right. The audience is a big key, R'Chelle. Thank you for bringing that up. It's not enough just to say, oh, people interested in cannabis. That's my audience. That might have worked like 5 years ago, actually. It might have been a good play. It's a decent place to start if you're just getting off the ground. But to your point, there's a lot of niches in cannabis that can definitely be taken advantage of right now if you know what you're doing.
Right. Absolutely.
You know, like baby boomers is a great one. You brought that up. That's 100% right. They, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe they're adopting it at the quickest rate right now.
They are. And so I'm focused on, I think that's why it's so important to have those conversations. Like, so I have content around how do I talk to my family about my consumption or how to introduce that to them. So like, you know, it was very trivial when I had to introduce to my 64-year-old mother the fact that I think that she should use CBD and topicals. So that was quite the interesting conversation. But I think, you know, we have to empower ourselves because most of the people in that baby boomer community are our parents or grandparents, and we have to empower ourselves so that we can help them be in better health and have extended lifestyles from the benefits of cannabis that we're all aware of.
I really love that you're kind of positioning content creation as stand up for what you believe. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's about aligning your kind of your soul with your business and your honesty, right? That's the easiest way to push out strong messages because you believe it, right? You believe it in your heart. So I know you've seen this a lot. How many people have we worked with that are just deathly afraid to do it?
So many.
And I think I got to tell you, in our space, you know, you are the expert here. So would you say that that's probably, like, where does that rank in terms of hindrances from clients? Is it 1, 2, 3? What would you say? Just that fear alone.
On a scale of 1 to 10, I would say it's at about a 7.
Yep.
That normally I have to do a lot of work. I have to do a lot of coaxing to get that video content or that public facing part of it. A lot of people are like, oh, I just kind of want to build the brand behind the scenes. And that's great. I think, you know, 5 years ago, I think you could build a cannabis brand behind the scenes. I think that you could build a whole entire community and never once show your face. You know, there's brands that we're aware of that are able to do that. Yep. Where the audience is shifting right now, especially in the middle of this pandemic right now, people really want to feel connected. People want to feel like they know you and you know them, and if they are investing in what you offer, it's a good investment. Right. So people, they just want to see your face. They want to hear your voice. Or some type of brand ambassador. They just want to know that they're putting their seed in good ground, so to speak.
I was just going to echo that. I mean, obviously, we both know there's CEOs that, you know, they don't present well that way. They're not required to, right? It is, though, important that, like you're saying, you have some sort of, you know, it could even be a symbol, maybe, you know, or like a character. You know, generally, though, I like you would suggest a person. Right? To kind of be the kind of point person for your brand. You know, could be a celebrity, could be your business development person, you know, could be somebody else, but like you should have somebody who people can feel like they can reach out to.
Right. You know, exactly like you all are doing, like on the public facing side of this, when we think Wrazel, if you don't know that you are a cannabis investment and all of that, like people are going to think of you because you are out here being the face of the brand. You're representing the whole entire brand culture. So you're right. Like, even if it's not the CEO or the founder, there definitely needs to be some buy-in from the brand in some way that shows your initiative and that you're connected and you care.
Wait, that's what I'm doing?
That's exactly what you're doing.
That's a lot of pressure, R'Chelle. I might be done with this whole thing.
You're doing a great job.
I thought I was just getting on and talking with my friends and having some fun. Now all of a sudden, I'm a face of a company? What? No, I'm just kidding. There's a lot of faces of Wrazel, which we're very fortunate to have, which is great. Actually, that's a decent segue for me to plug the Wrazel Broadcast Network. Obviously, if anybody's interested in actually having a show, or certainly being on this show, you can reach out to me at R'Razel.com, or even me specifically, Brian Holler, at bholler@R'Razel.com. And you can see how Wrazel's spelled right there, W-R-A-Z-E-L. One last thing before we go, R'Chelle. Any thoughts, any, I guess, strong suggestions, tips for people who might be listening in terms of, you know, we've talked about personalization, be creative with the type of content if you want. But if I'm just starting out and, you know, I'm listening to this conversation, I'm like, you're right, I got to get out there. What are maybe your first 2-3 steps that you might recommend to somebody do?
First step would be to assess your current skills. Because I can guarantee you that and I want to address this to say this is specifically for if you're interested in the ancillary side of the cannabis business, you're not trying to go after a license or anything like that. Just assess your current skills, what you are already great at doing, and look at the industry as a whole and see where there are some gaps. Like if you find that there's some gaps and holes in it, because that's what I did. I just realized, oh shoot, they don't know how to really communicate the message about cannabis. So assess what's going on in the industry, see what's missing and how you can fill in. And then as Brian and I have mentioned several times during this conversation, define a niche. If you are creating a CBD product, whatever it is, just make it specific to a particular audience that's all they want, that they want to consume it. So that would definitely be my recommendations for starting out.
Very good recommendations. I certainly echo them. R'Chelle, before we get out of here, let's make sure everybody knows how they can contact you and find you out there.
Yeah, you can find me everywhere on social media at R'Chelle Lynn. It's RCHELLELYNN. Yes, that's 2 consonants, no vowels. Talk to my mom. You can reach me. Yeah, so you can find me there, and all of my links are relevant, so you can just explore and get to me.
Excellent. And you can, of course, find R'Chelle on the Wrazel Services Index as well. Any ancillary service providers are there. So if you're looking for an agency or a content creator or perhaps an attorney, or an accountant or something, it's a great resource for you. R'Chelle, I look forward to having you on again soon. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks, Brian.
All right. Take care. We'll talk to you later.
Bye-bye.